It wasn't just another headline, it was the kind of moment that stops the world cold. A political figure collapsing on camera and the internet erupting with one burning question: who pulled the trigger? It was one of the most vivid political assassinations in history. And as Charlie Kirk collapsed on screen, the internet exploded with one question. But almost instantly, reality fractured. Official statements on one side, explosive theories on the other. And at the center of it all, Charlie Kirk. But to understand the wild speculation, you have to look beyond the gunshot. You have to see the two completely different realities that formed in its wake, and a cryptic warning posted a month earlier that suddenly felt like a prophecy. To understand why this story spun so far out of control, you have to rewind to the bitter cracks inside American conservatism that were already tearing it apart. Because this wasn't an attack from an outsider. Kirk was the ultimate insider, until a foreign war drove a wedge through his movement, until he started asking dangerous questions and challenging the very donors who built his career.
All right, we're diving into a really intense story today. It's about a major political figure, a shocking assassination, and a movement that seems to be completely tearing itself apart from the inside.
And, the craziest part, the whole thing was caught on video. It instantly became one of the most, vivid and viral political assassinations in history. And as Kirk collapsed, right there on screen, the internet just exploded with one single question: who did this?
Because, see, to really get why the speculation went so wild, you've got to look beyond that single gunshot. You have to understand this deep, really bitter fracture that had been cracking open inside American conservatism for months.
So let's start right at the beginning, the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Because right away, it was like two completely different realities started to play out.
Okay, so in the, let's call it the official world, everything looked like you'd expect. The response was fast, it was unified, you had condemnations from everyone, flags were lowered, powerful people were pledging money to his family. But online, especially among Kirk's own followers, that was a whole different universe. None of that official stuff mattered, because a much, much more explosive story was already catching fire.
And here's where it gets really wild. The groundwork for this whole theory was actually laid almost a full month before the assassination even happened. This post, right here, where someone claims Kirk thought Israel might kill him, well, after he was shot, it just went viral. It became the cornerstone, the piece of evidence for this theory about Israeli involvement. For a lot of people, this wasn't just some random coincidence. It felt like a prophecy that had just come true.
But wait a second. To even understand why a theory like this could get any traction, we have to hit rewind. We need to go back and look at how Charlie Kirk and his former colleague Candace Owens actually built their entire careers. Because they weren't outsiders. They were right at the heart of the pro-Israel conservative establishment.
You have to remember, for years, both Kirk and Owens were huge players in a conservative movement that was totally unified on one thing: unwavering support for Israel, often backed by a lot of donor money. I mean, they didn't just go along with this idea, they were out there on the front lines building it and promoting it.
They were the ultimate insiders, right? Champions of a belief system that honestly seemed unbreakable. Their job was to defend Israel, go after its critics, and they did very well because of it. So, what on earth changed?
Well, the big catalyst was October 7th, 2023, and everything that followed in Gaza. That single event didn't just split the world down the middle, it drove a massive wedge right through the American conservative movement. And suddenly, you started to hear a shift in Charlie Kirk's tone. He began echoing what a lot of his base, especially the younger Republicans, were feeling. They were starting to question that old-school automatic support for Israel. And Kirk started asking questions out loud. Questions that his own donors probably would have found completely unthinkable just a year earlier. And this was the real turning point. I mean, these weren't just some edgy, contrarian takes for clicks. This was a direct challenge to the entire establishment of his movement, questioning Epstein's ties, speculating about October 7th. He was giving a huge platform to dissent. And let me tell you, the backlash from the people who used to be his biggest allies, it was immediate and it was fierce.
And yeah, that kind of dissent, it came with a very, very high price tag, both in public and, as some sources claim, behind closed doors.
And all this pressure, the public attacks, the private warnings, it all laid the groundwork for the most explosive accusation of all after his death. You see, this wasn't just a friendly debate over policy anymore. It was being framed as an all-out war for the very soul of the conservative movement.
So, after Kirk was killed, a report drops from the gray zone, and it's a bombshell. Citing an anonymous source supposedly close to Kirk, it lays out this absolutely stunning story. A story that connects all that private pressure directly to the highest levels of the Israeli government.
Now, look, these claims are unproven, but they provided something crucial, a motive. And that just electrified social media. The narrative that took hold was simple. Kirk crossed a powerful foreign government, and he was silenced for it. The speculation got so out of control that it actually forced a direct and, frankly, a very unusual public denial.
And this is really the heart of the conflict, isn't it? On one side, you have this massive conspiracy theory, which, importantly, is rooted in fears Kirk himself supposedly expressed. And on the other side, you have a direct, televised denial from the Prime Minister of Israel. So the public is stuck in the middle, asking, who do you believe?
So let's zoom out. What does all this actually mean for the conservative movement? Well, in a way, the assassination feels like the violent final act of a story that's been building for a while. The story of an ideology that is fundamentally breaking apart over things like foreign policy, who has influence, and what it even means to be a conservative anymore.
And this quote, wow. This is from Ben Shapiro, a guy who helped launch Candace Owens' career and was a major ally of Kirk's. And he said this just 4 days before Kirk was killed. It perfectly captures the bitterness, the infighting that was happening. That idea of a big tent for conservatives, it wasn't just fraying, it was collapsing. When you look at the story of Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, it's really not just about two people. It's a case study of a political movement in the middle of a full-blown crisis. Think about it. Their journeys run almost perfectly in parallel. They became stars by championing one set of ideas, and then they were either kicked out or, in Kirk's case, allegedly threatened for daring to question those exact same ideas.
And that really is the big, provocative question that this whole tragedy leaves us with. Forget the theories and the denials for a second. At the end of the day, the assassination of Charlie Kirk has ripped the curtain back on a massive rift, and it's left a giant question mark hanging over the entire future of American conservatism.
This wasn't just one man's death. It was the violent climax of a movement breaking apart. So we are left with an unproven bombshell report, a direct denial from a world leader, and a movement in crisis. The assassination didn't create this rift. It was the violent final act of a story long underway. This is the case study of an ideology breaking apart, and the giant question mark it leaves hanging over American politics.